Hi, good day, everybody. Dave Walker here with the B to SMB Institute. And I've set up a series of sessions, of segments during this conference to allow leaders from our B to SMB brand community to really have head-to-head conversations with the leaders from very large small business advocacy organizations. And really the purpose is because we share a common constituency in the form of millions of small businesses across the US, probably be a good idea if we got to know each other, which has happened a lot over the course of the last 18 months, but also start to think in terms of how do we more strategically work together to serve small businesses. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce on the Small Business Advocacy Organization side, I'd like to introduce John Arensmeyer, who's the CEO and founder of Small Business Majority. Good morning, John.
Morning, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And on the brand side, Ranga Bodla, who runs field marketing and engagement and sales for Netsuite. Ranga, good morning.
Good morning, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking with both of you as always.
Well, it's great again to have you both. Why don't we start with, I think it's always good, particularly as we add new members over the course of the year, and we've added a lot in 2021. For both of you guys just to spend a brief amount of time introducing yourselves and your organization. So, John, why don't we start with you?
Sure, Dave. Well, we've been around for just about 16 years. I founded Small Business Majority because I had been an entrepreneur myself. I'd run an interactive communications company, and I've been involved in public policy very early in my career. And decided, sort of looking at my two interests in public policy and small business, looked around and I thought that the landscape needed a new voice for small business, one that was distinct and authentic for the needs of our smallest entrepreneurs. So we got going almost 16 years ago. We sort of have two prongs on advocacy. We work on a whole variety of issues from access to capital, to healthcare, to benefits for small businesses. And we also have a very large arm that provides education and resources through seminars, through our digital platform, venturize.org. And we sort of work those two arms in parallel. And, we're now, obviously, we've been very focused on the pandemic for the last 18 months and looking to see what we can do as we pull out of that.
And how many small businesses are within your network?
Oh, thanks for asking. We have 85,000 small businesses on our network, and we have partnerships with about 1,500 business organizations across the country that we work with to do our outreach and our education, but also with whom we partner on advocacy and other matters.
Thanks. I'm always impressed by the breadth of coverage that you guys have created over the years, and I imagine it grew even more over the course of the last 18 months. As demands for help like yours really came to the forefront. So Ranga, how about you?
Sure, Ranga Bodla, and I run, as you said, kind of our go-to-market here at Netsuite. For those that may not be familiar with Netsuite, we work with businesses of all size, but about 27,000 organizations around the world use Netsuite day in and day out to really power and manage their businesses. Small businesses, growing businesses, this is really kind of our bread and butter. It's something that we are big believers in since our founding in 1998, which is kind of crazy, which we were founded prior, like really at the start of even before people were even talking cloud. We were founded back then, and the notion was our founder Evan Goldberg really had this, who's spoken here at for BDS and BI conferences before. Really had this idea that all businesses should have the same power and the same tools to be able to succeed. And you've got a lot of great entrepreneurs out there, you've got a lot of great growing businesses, but sometimes they may need to have the right tools and things available to them in order to be able to level the playing field. And so for us, we work with organizations of all sizes, from the very small to the very large. Of course, over the last 18 months, we've been having a lot of conversations with all of them about what's happening in their organizations, and we'd love to work with organizations like John's, to really kind of broaden our message and also make sure that we're listening, we're paying attention to what their members need. I've been at NetSuite for 11 years now, Dave, and I've gotten to speak to a lot of customers in that time frame. And the thing I'm always trying to constantly remember is what are the bottlenecks for them, what's making their jobs harder, and how do we help with that? How do we take the stuff that gets in their way out of the way and really focus on driving change and helping these organizations grow. And it's been a phenomenal year for us as an organization. I'll just give out one brag point, which is we've had 158 companies just this year alone go public on NetSuite. And so these are companies that may have started just a couple of guys in a garage or a couple of gals in a garage, and grown up with NetSuite. And so it's really great to see that. And again, really pleased to be here and speaking with both of you.
Well, that's congratulations. That is a great measure of success. You teed up something, Ranga, that is really a question that I have in two parts, and I'll start with you, John. What are the specific challenges that you believe small businesses are facing right now on October 6, 2021? Maybe the top 3-4 that you have identified.
Well, we're focused on two things. One is how to rebuild coming out of the pandemic, and the other is kind of where small business fit into the sort of greater economic ecosystem. As far as the first, which is specifically what you asked, there are really 3 buckets that we're focusing on, and I think the pandemic has really sort of highlighted the need for these. One is capital. Access to capital is consistently the single biggest concern that most small businesses have. And I think we saw during the pandemic disparities on how capital is distributed. These are problems that existed before the pandemic, but they were the sort of disparities across the economic spectrum were heightened. So we're very focused on new innovative strategies for getting capital out to small businesses. We're very excited about the state small business credit initiative. SSBCI was reauthorized. We're kind of waiting for the rules to come out on that. There are exciting opportunities like the number of rebuilding funds around the country. One in the southern states we're very involved with. In California, we're very involved with. There's also one in New York, one in Washington State. So new innovative ways. I think there's a role for the government to step up and help redefine how risk is assessed, support products that perhaps are a little more patient in their need for repayment and payment terms. The second bucket is really a desperate need for information and resources. And that's kind of gets to the second part of our organization, which is really providing small businesses with the tools that they need. We just hear time and again, technical assistance, the need for the small businesses to really get a handle on what's out there, what they can do, what they should be doing to improve their business plan, help they need in HR, in marketing. So that's kind of the second bucket. And then the third is making sure that there is a sort of a social infrastructure, benefits infrastructure, where people can start businesses and grow businesses and create quality employment. And that covers healthcare, paid leave, childcare, retirement. And in order for small businesses to operate on a level playing field and to really thrive, they need that, whether it's for the entrepreneurs themselves and for their employees, and for them to be able to hire everyone they want to hire and create quality jobs. So those are the 3 buckets that we're most focused on.
That's a great recap. Ranga, same for you. What are the challenges that you are seeing that small business are facing right now that you're helping to address?
So, I think John really nailed it on a couple of areas. One thing that we hear very acutely is small businesses are really struggling with trying to understand how do they focus, because they got a lot of things coming at them. They got a lot of different parts to this. with us specifically, we're focused on the technology side of it. And what we've been trying to do is how do we provide, it is ultimately infrastructure, but how do we provide technology that can enable a company, to be able to go back go back and be productive again. We've had a lot of companies that we spoke to 18 months ago, that we're talking to now, or we talked to in the last 6 months, and come over to NetSuite. But specifically, what the conversation has been is how to, we're in this constant ebb and flow, where we're sending people back home, we're trying to go fully remote, we're trying to do these different things, and they're looking at how do we operate in that mode. How do I make sure that I can deliver product to my customers when I need it? How do I make sure that the warehouse staff can be in the office? How do I ensure that the finance staff can continue to operate? How do I ensure that the organization doesn't get stopped by the things that are happening? So that's one. The second is the data side of it, and I think that's another piece we hear from a lot of our customers, where they really need help in just kind of getting a handle on kind of, I'll call it we call it a dashboard, but getting a dashboard view of what are the key things that are going to help them guide and drive their business. Because to some of the things that John brought up, and a lot of these different programs, there's decision points. You have to decide, I'm going to apply to this program. It's not just people give you money just to give you money, right? They have to apply to it. They have to make a decision, and if they applied, there are obviously implications. And so, trying to help organizations as they make those decisions, or to even have the information to be able to make those decisions, I think is a really important part of this. So that's really what we're trying to do, and trying to help with a lot of different companies.
So the second part of the question, that was a great recap, and for both of you guys. The second part of the question, John, I'll start with you again, is what are the challenges in facing the challenges? In other words, you obviously have a set of solutions to address the challenges that your small business constituency are facing, but what are the challenges in delivery, in actually manifesting that out there in the small business ecosystem?
Well, I think it's a lot of what Ranga just said. I mean, you've got small business owners trying to navigate their way out of the pandemic. Things are coming at them full speed. Unlike big businesses, they don't have marketing departments. They don't have an army of accountants and lawyers. They do what they do best, whether it's run a restaurant or provide services, and they need help, but they're busy. I mean, they're working 12, 14 hours a day. So, it's really tricky to figure out, how do you get information to them, in practical information on how they can best operate their business, and then information on all the various resources out there, whether they're private, whether they're government, various programs. So this is what we've spent a lot of time doing, and working with partners who are working with these business owners in these communities to help get the word out, whether it's webinars we do, whether it's providing information through our Venturize platform, whether it's empowering these other organizations who are providing information to get it to small businesses. I think the other thing is that, this talking about them doing advocacy, just organizing them to do any kind of effective advocacy. Again, they're very time limited. Their stories are absolutely essential to policymakers who are making decisions, but even finding time to get them to communicate their stories, or to sort of vet them to talk to the media, it's often time they don't have. So again, you're talking about, in general, about people who have tremendous needs, and yet really need organizations like ours, really need providers like NetSuite to really help get that information to them in a meaningful way.
That's terrific. And Ranga, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it sounds like Dave and I John and I are pretty aligned on this. I mean, to be clear, I don't think anyone has cracked this code and is doing like doing the perfect job on this, to be clear, us included. I'd love to tell you that, oh yeah, we've done this perfectly. We haven't. Now I feel like we've done some good things, and and I know some of the stuff that John is referencing specifically. There are some good things being done, but I think there is really an opportunity here, which is, and Dave, I know you. This is sort of the whole point of the Institute in the first place, which is how do you bring together all the different stakeholders and constituents out there that can help support small businesses. And I think that's, I think there's the pandemic, I think what it did do is it opened a lot of people's eyes that there's an opportunity here that's being missed. There's a set of businesses that are driving growth in the US economy. And we really need to be thinking about how do we help power those businesses in a different way? Because I think that's something that, I think we have an opportunity here, and I think coming out of the pandemic, kind of continuing this growth. I can't remember the tweet that came out this morning, but it was something about just we're there's still 10.9 million job openings that we got another. I'm not going to quote it exactly, but another 6 million jobs still to go to make up the shortfall. Like there's a lot out there. But that can be that there's an opportunity for that to be delivered by small businesses, by medium-sized business, by large businesses. But the small businesses are the ones that are driving that innovation and driving a lot of the employment and the growth. And we need them to be successful because that's what drives a lot of the foundation of this country and what we've got going.
Yeah, and thanks. That was a great recap again. I think that gosh, even if we were just purely selfish, and I really mean that, if we were purely selfish, we should be doing this. We should be working together to really ensure the health of our small business constituencies, because they're our customers effectively. They're our purpose. John and Ranga both, at the risk of putting you on the spot, and I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, I really more than anything want you guys to step back a little bit and provide from your perspective a bit of a diagnostic on John, from your perspective, what are the gaps in knowledge that you find yourself repeatedly encountering as you work with partner brands? And I know you work with dozens of them, some of them who are members of our institute. And then I'll flip it around, Ranga, so you have a little more time to think about it. But what are the things that you believe that you're encountering in the form of gaps in either your company's knowledge or even your own personal knowledge, your leadership team's knowledge of advocacy organizations and what they do? So John, hope the question makes sense. Over to you.
Yeah, look, I think that there's so many resources out there that, but I think that advocacy organizations don't understand well enough that there are organizations like Netsuite, like Gusto, like others out there that are really, yes, of course it's this use the term selfish. I wouldn't use the term selfish, self-interest. Of course, it has to be mutual self-interest, so this doesn't work. There's a self-interest and a genuine desire among many of these brands for small businesses to be successful, because these are their customers. And so I think that we can help provide, I think, a sort of a range of sort of what are small businesses thinking. We're constantly surveying small businesses. We're constantly talking to them, and kind of let the brands understand that beyond their own narrow set of services, products and services, that actually there's this full range of need, and then to make sure that's being delivered in a quality fashion. And then it's up to us to sort of help to synthesize, to do kind of a best of brand kind of analysis, and help to present that to small business owners. So there's a funnel, there's a sort of there's an education part we can provide, and also a funnel. But I would be the first to say that most small business advocacy groups don't fully appreciate what the brands have to offer, and don't fully understand the alignment that's there.
Over to you, Ranga. Same question.
Dave, you and I had this conversation briefly on it, and we talked about it in the context of marriage. John, so you haven't heard this one before, but there's a quote that I told John once that actually I got from a sales rep, and I thought it was a really powerful one. but he says that, we oftentimes act, we listen to act instead of, or listen to respond instead of listening to understand. And I think that, I say that quote because I think it's a really important one to put into this context, which is there's an opportunity first to listen to understand before we listen to respond. Because I think, I know I'm guilty of this, it's just listening to understand what really small businesses are going through. Like, it's easy for me to sit here and say, you know what, this is what you got to go do. This is the technology roadmap you got to take. This is, why would you use X or Y or Z? But what that fails to take into account is all of the other factors that an organization is dealing with. And you said it, you're probably conservative in your comment, John. I mean, you said 12 to 14 hours. I mean, these small business owners are probably actually working more, 18 to 20 hours, it seems like, from what I hear sometimes with some of these folks. And the struggle is, it's like, if you're working those hours, whether it's 12 to 14 or whether it's 18 to, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's a lot, and it's more than they have the ability to be able to take a step back and say, okay, what's something that's going to help me alleviate some pain that I can, gain some time back. And so I think that's a really, so that's sort of my response, Dave. I quote that I put that quote out there because I do think it's a really important piece, which is we've got to listen to understand. And I think there's an opportunity, again, with some of these organizations, particularly like the small business majority and what they're doing, but also others, where if we can understand what are those key pain points that a small business might be dealing with, maybe that's an area we can dig into first, and help them with that. And, and we had this early on, I think, when PPP 1 and PPP 2 both came out. I know we did some programs specifically about that. And, people really were really kind of, they were struggling with, where do I start? If I apply for this, am I shooting myself in the foot? It's those types of things, Dave, that I think are really important, that are really difficult. And, John rattled off a handful of other additional programs that are being put out there. And again, it's like, the good news is there's a lot of different programs out there. The bad news is there's a lot of different programs out there, and trying to get a clear handle on which ones I should be paying attention to and which are the ones I can put in place for my business, I think are difficult. And so I think that's sort of the constant challenge is how do we help businesses with that. Now, we do push this message of, we want to help companies to grow. We want to help companies to remove those bottlenecks. But I do think there's a balance between how prescriptive you are in that versus, helping educate and providing, guidance at a higher level to help them understand on these things.
First of all, I remember that quote. I love that quote, listening to respond versus listening to understand. And I'm a terrible practitioner of that at home with both wife and children. But I think that it actually captures, and you mentioned PPP, in the early stages of the pandemic, and John, I don't know if you witnessed this, there was a race of brands trying to respond to the crisis that was being faced by small business. And in many cases, the response was, let's just write bigger and bigger checks. Let's offer our product for free. It was a response without understanding necessarily. And that's not to take anything away from the genuinely the genuine impulse that so many leaders had to help, to want to step in. John, do you think that there's an opportunity for that greater understanding that ultimately leads to, frankly, more strategic dialogue between brands and a small business majority?
Yeah, there is. And the silver lining coming out of the pandemic was the fact that not only did the public understand, I think, better with the role of small business in our economy and society, but that there was a coming together, or at least a joint, shall I say, parallel or joint effort, as you said, to do something. Look, I mean, things are moving so fast that, I mean, money was great. No, it was not the most efficiently distributed. PPP was not efficiently distributed at all. But I mean, let's not look backwards and point fingers. Let's figure out, okay, what have we learned from this? And let's go forward. I think, quite frankly, Beat SMB has a role to play in bringing us together. Really appreciate your really reaching out and including all of us advocates in all of your conversations. We need to collectively, figure out what we can do. We are both are a couple of things going on, two things going on. One is our Ventureize platform. And again, we're trying to expand this out, and we want to be sort of have a set of vetted products and services on there as we grow it. And there are other platforms out there too, and we're talking about how we can partner with them, because some of them are doing things better than we are. So that's kind of up to us to have that, reach out and have the dialogue with the brands to figure out how they fit in. The other thing is, we just launched our Alliance for Resilient Small Business Economy, and we're bringing together partners, not just small local partners, which are critical to this, but actually bringing partners of all sorts, for-profit, nonprofit, together to have a discussion about what we can do moving forward collectively. And then, whoever wants to join on to various advocacy activities or various initiatives can do that. So, yeah, I mean, I think we as advocates can provide that structure. And now we know that there is this interest and demonstrated interest and concern among the brands. That's something that a year and a half ago, I wasn't really aware of some of the efforts within the brands to really think about and understand small business needs, and probably was dismissive of some of them. And that's changed. So I think we have an opportunity to come out of the pandemic to come together and move forward.
So Ranga, I know you would agree with John on that. And my question is kind of in the form of landing the plane here. What are the things in 2022 that you would either do or advise others do in the form of creating that more actionable strategic relationship with advocacy organizations? Putting you on the spot, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think part of this, honestly comes with the whole, there's a lot of conversations around how the buyer journey has shifted, and we can, whether you talk about small businesses or whether we talk about just ourselves, and Dave, you and I have had many conversations around pizza ovens. John, you're welcome to join us on one of those conversations if you'd like. I don't know, you're a pizza guy. But I digress. No, but my point being that buyers are making decisions differently, both business buyers as well as consumers. They're making decisions differently. They don't follow a linear path. It's not like you wake up one morning, you're like, you know what, I'm going to go and buy a new accounting system. And you go and you go down this linear path. I go to the website. Okay, now I'm, it's like that notion of a buyer journey goes all over the place, because how you go do it is you go and talk to your colleagues, your peers. You go do some research. You go and search the internet and see what's out there. You go to some vendors. You go and look what you could find. And you educate yourself. And you have all these different pieces that are coming in. So for us, and one of the big learnings and one of the big things that we're going to be really spending a lot of time on, and we're starting this. We just recently had started to make some more traction on this, and we're going to be investing in it even more, is this notion of partnering with other organizations, of where those influencers. And I'll just give you the one example of one that we've had a long-standing relationship with, the Cfo Leadership Council. We've been partnered with the Cfo Leadership Council since its founding, basically. Its founding member, Jack McCullough, and a lot of our key stakeholders are financial executives. But that's just one. And we've got to broaden to the influencers that our businesses are talking to, and making sure that we're meeting them there, because they're listening to folks like John, and as they should, because John and his organization are providing them good, actionable information. But we need to meet them there. If John's telling them, hey, you need to focus on these 5 things, we need to talk about how we can help them do those 5 things.
Mhm.
Maybe we can't do all 5 things, but that's okay. You know what? That's where the whole ecosystem comes into play. So I think this is that's for me when I look at 2022. That's, well, not even looking at 2022, just now and kind of moving forward. That's really what it's going to be. It's getting more of those introductions, getting more connections into how we can drive that forward.
Listen, thank you guys for both being just terrific leaders. John, I remember, back in meeting a skeptical John back in April of 2020, and I came to you and I probably sounded a little bit like an idiot because I said, "Hey, John, I represent this very large population of brand executives who sell to small businesses, and we know bloody all about what really goes into the making of policies and laws and advocacy on behalf of those small business. Could you please come give us an education?" And you and your team have been doing that really for the last year. I think very well laid out, guys, and I appreciate you providing what I hope is a relatively clear playbook on what's possible. And it's really up to, as you guys have each described it, you have a good sense of what you would like to have happen, what you would like to do, which is really the beginning of phone calls and meetings and actual putting pen to paper and figuring out how to do certain things. But I'll just leave with this from both of your perspective. Briefly, John, what's your read on the state of small business right now?
Well, I'm a glass half full type of person, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, a couple things have happened. As I said, small business has become much more prominent in the thinking of the entire country. I think the brands that you represent have become more focused on real needs. And interestingly, we've seen some small businesses fail, but we've seen a tremendous amount of small business creation in the last year. As Ranga said, the economy is really changing. I'm not sure any of us are fully aware of why that's happening, but it is happening. And not all of these new enterprises that have been set up are going to be super successful. But there is I think, a enhanced notion that being entrepreneurial, a lot of people decided, hey, I don't want to work for a big company anymore. I want to do my own thing coming out of this. And so being entrepreneurial, it can have tremendous benefits to our society, to our economy. And we need to be there for these people to address this phenomenon, which has really kind of changed from the trend that had been going on until recently. And it's a whole new world. It's a whole new set of concerns. And we need to be there. And, I'm optimistic, and I'm very optimistic about the folks in your organization that I've met in the last year and a half who I think will be great partners going forward.
Great. Ranga, how about you? What's your perspective?
I like John, I tend to be a glass half full guy. If I am honestly a little worried about the current shenanigans happening in DC, but I hope we can find a path forward around that and make sure we get through that. I think we get through that unscathed, then I think it's there. The trends are very positive. There's obviously these bigger macro trends around inflationary concerns and all these other things, but I think they're the puzzle. I think they're part of the puzzle of this shift. There's a shift, and it's no one ever said it was going to be easy to make this shift. I think as all of these things you start to see with the supply chain and many of these things, it didn't fit the model of what's needed. And I think there's going to be a little bit of pain, not a little bit. There's a decent amount of pain associated with that shift and the migration. But my hope is what will result is a stronger foundation, a stronger set of both local producers, local distributors, local companies. I think that's what I'm hoping for. I think I think that's really where the opportunity is.
Guys, this has been every bit what I hoped it would be, and a whole lot more, actually. Ranga, you mentioned early in the conversation before we hit the record button that you've actually hired a person to 100% of their time focus on working with advocacy organizations, which I think is fantastic. And John, I know I've met so many members of your team and how incredibly smart and energized they are and working on the projects that they work on. So I think your associate Ranga is going to find a really good fertile ground in working with John and the team at Small Business Majority. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Ranga. Very much appreciated.